Okay. Let's pray. Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the beauty of your creation all around us, and we just pray that that you enable us to enjoy that and to relax in your creation. But I just pray that you be with us now as well, as we take this time to just think about how we can best serve you in our churches, in running giving programs and enabling people to respond to your generosity to us. And Lord, we just pray for your blessings on this time, and we pray for your blessings on each person who's here listening to this webinar. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Liz, welcome.
Thank you. Right, let's kick off with sharing our screen, and from the beginning. There we go. Phew, I'm always relieved when that works. Running a giving program, aka stewardship campaign or generous giving program. There's all sorts of phrases for it these days. I thought I'd start off with this quote to just get us sort of grounded in where we're starting from. All too often, the money story in our churches is, I can't see that, is a barren story, one of scarcity. We have to learn to tell another story, a gospel story of God's abundance and promise, and of our discipleship responsibility. I'm going to leave that there for a few seconds just to reflect on that. Is that our story? That our money story is one of being barren, of scarcity. But actually we do have a better story, gospel story of God's abundance and promise, and of our discipleship responsibility. So bearing that phrase in mind, that's a quote in mind, and particularly perhaps discipleship responsibility, leave that lodged in the back of your head as we go forward in this webinar. Let's do the basics first. What is a giving program? Now, in some ways, it's easier to say what it isn't. It isn't a fundraising event. It isn't just a notice in the news sheet for a few weeks. It's not even a one-off sermon or a 10-minute request from the treasurer for increased giving. No, not that. What it is, it's something that's planned, prayed about, focused on, and generally covers a few weeks, a length of time, 3 to 4 weeks. 2 weeks is too short, so 3 to 4 weeks, to have that in mind in our planning. The basis of it, again, it's about faith raising, not fundraising. I love that quote. It's faith raising, not fundraising. And we need to think of it in the context of a discipleship development program, discipleship development. That is so key to this. It's not the fundraising. It's not saying we need this amount of money. This might help us a bit to sort of compare the two things. If we're looking at a stewardship program, our Christian stewardship, it's about responding to God. Whereas if we're doing a fundraising campaign, that's responding to need. Could be, you know, we need a new roof, or we need to pay off our bills, whatever it is. That's a need, and that's why we're doing the fundraising for it. It's specific. Back to Christian stewardship, it's general, as in it's covering our whole life, whereas fundraising, as I say, is for a specific purpose. Stewardship is the issue for the church family as a whole, for us to gather and learn and develop. The fundraising, it is also for the wider community. And stewardship, planned and regular, whereas in fundraising, we tend to look at it being as a one-off or a fixed term event that we're raising money for. Now, before we even start on planning our stewardship program, our giving program, we do need to ask ourselves some serious questions first. And when I was writing this, I immediately came to mind the words in the marriage service which goes, I wrote it down, this must not be undertaken carelessly, lightly, or selfishly, but reverently, responsibly, and after serious thought. And I kind of came to mind because actually, if we are planning to do a stewardship program, a giving program, then we really do have to think very carefully about it for all sorts of reasons. And here are a few of them. First question, why do we want to do this, and what is it that's driving it? My first question here at this time of lockdown, even emerging from lockdown, is it right for your church at the moment? You know, we know that our congregation, everybody has been touched by this time and has reacted to it in all sorts of different ways. Some people have found it a positive time, but on the whole, most people have struggled in one way or another. And I think most people, if they're truly honest, will have found difficult times. In particular, not being in church, not being able to worship in the building that we're used to worshipping in, and with the people, with the community of God, then it's been difficult. So is doing a stewardship program the right time to do it now? I'm not sure it is, but the good thing about you coming along to this webinar is that you can be prepared for when it is the right time to do it. And because there's a lot of planning that's involved with doing this, then you can get on with that, definitely. So next question then is, are there people who will take on the planning? It's a big job. There's a lot to do and a lot to think about, a lot to pray about. So are there people who can do that and who are prepared to take it on? Now, we do have a lot of churches with smaller congregations, and you might already be thinking, if you're from that parish, that how do we some places, some churches can actually join together with others in the benefice to plan this as a group idea. Each church will be different, but there'll be some things that you can come together and work together on so that you get help from each other to put this together. And hopefully that you can see how that will work as we go through this. The other big question is the leadership behind this. That's quite important. Taking this to your PCC is a useful thing to do, because you really do need your leadership to be fully 100% wanting this to go forward and to happen. Thinking about those questions of what is driving us in doing this, is it because we have this immediate financial shortfall, which makes us think, right, we need to do a giving program, or perhaps you're seeing there's a problem down the tracks and really are going to need to do something soon. It could be about disagreements in the church, about mission giving or MMF, and we need to do some work on that and teaching people about that. Or actually, are you just thinking it is part of our growing in our faith and our discipleship? So it's time we did it. It's time we carried on with this. If the answer to that question, and you're here today for this webinar, is because it is due to the immediate financial shortfall, do have a look at one of our previous webinars, which was communicating our financial need. And next week as well, we are doing a program on communications, and which is called, I have to write it down, Communicate Your Needs and Tips to Maximize the Impact. So we're going to look at those, the best ways of communicating those needs, those situations. And we're going to look at through letters, through online social media, what's the most effective way to communicate that need. Because if it is the fact that, this is our problem, we haven't got enough money coming in to pay our MMF, then the answer to that is we need to communicate the fact that we are down in our income, and what's the best way to do that. That can be a one-off type of thing, doesn't have to be a whole giving program to do that. So I hope that makes sense about the difference of why you would do this and why you would do just a fundraiser, or So comments would be good if we're on the right track here. Okay. Why is a giving program valuable? Why should we be doing it? Well, it is a focused time. Taking those 3 to 4 weeks gives us time to really reflect on the generosity of God. That will be through the sermons, could be through the literature, but it is a time for us to just think about where we are before God, with hopefully building a culture within our church community of the joy of generosity. It's an opportunity to share your story as a church and give testimonies of generosity. And it's amazing how when I've heard people talk about how God has met their needs, both in so many ways, you know, financially, through health, through all sorts of things, but how inspiring that is to our own faith and our own growth. The practical sides of it, it's the opportunity to educate on the importance of regular planned giving. And it can be that platform to encourage new mechanisms for giving. So, for example, if you've signed up to the parish giving scheme, you could use that time to talk a bit about how it's been working and how people who are using parish giving scheme find it useful for their own commitment to God and their own generosity. And of course, obviously, the outcome increases the resources that we have for our mission and our ministry in our churches. So, in a nutshell, it's both spiritual and it's practical. It's 2 things together there. Bear in mind. Where do we start? So the prayer and the planning is so crucial to having this program working well and efficiently. So of course, start with prayer. I do like the story of Nehemiah. You can look that up yourself. It's there, it's the pray, the plan, and the act. So think about getting a small planning group together. I have to say, before even thinking about what to do in church, you kind of think, oh, I'll just get on and organise it myself. But the value of having a planning group is not to be underestimated. It's useful to have that group that you can share what you want to do, share the work with, and get things moving forward, get those decisions, talk through what's going to do. Now, the third bit here, write a case statement. That sounds rather grand. I thought I'd put on this slide what it actually is. So it is the foundational document for the programme. Summarises the mission objectives of the church, stewardship and financial challenges, and the giving target that will both sustain and grow mission and ministry. This is an interesting one. Its preparation will gently test the church leadership commitment. I'm going to show you an example of that now. Now, there is, I'll put the link on this slide here so that you can go and have a look at it, as in the Giving in Grace website, which Christine's going to talk about a bit more later about the different resources that are around. There's a very good case statement there. So I think I've got to stop here now to then show you, go back in, here it is, an example of what it looks like. I'm not even going to try and pronounce how you say that church name. Is it real? Someone will know, someone will know. So here we go. Generally, the case statement will start off with looking first at what your strengths and your weaknesses, a bit like a SWOT thing, that you already have in your church. So as I say, this is a case statement, this is an example. On the same website, and the link that I put on the slide has the link to the template. So you don't have all the words in it, you just have the subjects and you can fill it in yourself. So it's It's very handy. Okay, so for example, in this church, the three main strengths, you can see those there, our church fellowship, lots of organisations. I'm sure that's the same for a lot of our parishes. We have a welcome team in the sense we're a welcome church, we're a prayerful church. We have strong relationships with other churches involved with local ecumenical outreach team. So think about your strengths. What are the weaknesses in your church? This one particularly thinks it's to do with having a shortage of teenagers and young adults. I'm sure we can all relate to that. And also the practical side of it, the heating system for the church buildings no longer adequate. And then the third one, which I'm sure we can also relate to as well, money always seems to be short. And we've had significant deficits. And then our agreed or provisional plans for the next 1 or 2 years. Now the plans might have already been talked about in the PCC, for example, about where we're going with our church, what the plans we've got. So again, you can see here, this is to do with practical things, replacing the boiler, carpeting an area at the back of the church, significantly increasing our mission giving, and in full our wider obligations to support and fund Christian ministry. So they're quite just practical, straightforward. The second section reflects a little bit on the stewardship practice and culture of the church, which we're already in, how we're already approaching that. And these are taken from, I don't know if you remember or have used, and perhaps you might be new to your PCC, a couple of years ago, we did a new Giving for Life. Giving for Life back in 2009 was done by the Church of England on 10 sort of ways for moving forward in stewardship and particular things to look at. It's then reviewed a couple of years ago and sent around to every PC, new one to look at and to discuss and perhaps take some steps forward from that. It included things like preaching and teaching. And so on the template, we'll ask you different questions to look at, to think about. So as you can see here, the first one on preaching and teaching, where we preach regularly about giving and wider issues of stewardship. And in this church, it says, giving has rarely been taught in our church. Last stewardship program was nearly 20 years ago. Again, I imagine that's quite usual. So yeah, something to think about there. But it's about putting it all down so that you know where you are and where you've come from. The second one was about budgeting for ministry and mission and connecting giving to ministry outcomes. This is something Christine and I have covered a bit in that, in communicating our need and about communicating what our mission is about in our parish, what's our ministry about, what's our calling in our parish, what's our vision. So before you kind of then, it's better to communicate that than to, rather than saying we need X amount of money to be raised. You can see there what they've written down there. The PCC have never set a budget. Accounts are only presented each year to the church annual meeting by our treasurer. Okay, stewardship practice. Moving on. Our gift aid secretary is very active in promoting gift aid giving, ensuring good supply of one-off gift aid giving envelopes for visitors. And we have no annual review of giving. Again, I've covered that in a previous webinar looking at how to do an annual review. Anybody have any questions about that, then please drop me an email if you missed that one, and I can send you the link to that. Okay. So it goes through, as you can see. I'm not going to spend time on each one of those, but you can see the different areas that the planning group can look at and then write onto their case statement, leadership. Then we get to the financial side of it, the income and expenditure. This is where I need a treasurer, because I'm not a treasurer, I'm not a financial expert. So, and you might be like me and think, How do you do graphs? A bit more complicated. But you see, the point here is that they're looking at how the last so many years have gone. So from 2010, for example, now it shows you, this is a few years old now, isn't it? But back in 2010, their income was 105,000, and it shows the expenditure to there, and this was their surplus up here, 21,000. But over the years, income has been going down, so now they're in the deficit. And it's that sort of information that you need to be pulling together for your case statement, so that you know what you're going from. Now, you don't necessarily need all these flashy graphs, and I'm going to show you a simplified version after this, but it's helpful to see the differences and how things have changed over the years. Look at reserves and what the situation is with reserves in your church. Are they restricted? Are they unrestricted? Can you use them? Or are they actually restricted for other things? Now this part, the planned giving profile, this is important. This is important because we need to know how our regular giving is working, because this will then speak to how you communicate going forward. Now, I'm trying to pull out the best bit here. TEPG, tax efficient planned giving. At the bottom here, it shows you the different amounts. So between, so that first there is up to £1, then £1 to £2.49. This one between £2.50 and £4.99. So basically they're showing you here how many people are giving in those different categories. So there's 5 people that give £1 or less a week, 4 people that give £1 to £2.50, 10 who are giving £2.50 to £4.99. It goes up like that. And then lots of other breakdowns of how people are giving. And you see, as it comes to the conclusions from that, is if nothing changes by the end of this, particularly this was 2015, the money in having the bank will be almost gone. Okay. And it goes on, so you can then put together your planned giving profile. The average giving is this. And actually the main fact there was that 60% of our planned income is from just 15 people, and 20 people are giving less than £2 per week. You see, that's very useful information, because then you can see how to approach talking about giving, talking about regular giving, and the options that are there, really. A little section there about open plate giving. And so as you can see, that takes quite a bit of work, really. And final conclusions about how they're going to look at moving people perhaps from loose plate givers to planned giving. Okay. We can send this out, the whole sheet as well, can't we, Christine, to everybody, so you can actually have a good read of that. So by the end of it, you see, it comes back to what the financial challenge is. The coming year, the cost to fund the ministry of this church is £1,482, and currently, without any increase in giving, they estimate the income is £1,289, leaving that difference of £195. And so there you see, they've now got a specific target to meet. They're going to need £195 a week. increase to actually cover the bases. Another page on the church budget. I'm not going to look at that. But then just to show you this one, section 6, this is called a gift array. And it's an idea where you can say, you know how much you need to have extra per week, £195.50. And it gives you a range of possible financial responses that people might like to give. Because when you are using a giving program, part of it at the end, it is the asking people to review their giving. And this might be one of those ways that you can use in that, saying, you know, this is this is what we need to cover what we want to do in our mission in this parish, and it's a matter of £195 a week. Now, if 7 people could increase their giving by £1 a week, and 13 people could increase their giving by £2 a week, 19 did by £3.50, 2 people by £8, then straight away we've met that amount of money we need. You can use any mixture as you like, but if you know how many people you have giving £1 a week, then you would make it, you approach that one as that amount of people. You see what I mean? Rather than saying, well, we expect 10 people to give £10 a week more. It's once you're aware, once you know how your giving is working, how people are giving in your church, you can then relate this more effectively. And then finally, at the end of this one, they have questions for consultation. So then once you've done that, you can pass that to your PCC and the leadership team, and including that's your clergy, your readers, to look at this and to answer some of the questions that are here. I think it's correct, that does reflect our situation. Do you have any questions or comments on the data presented? Is the budget realistic? And that last important question, as a church leader, do you feel you can personally commit to giving in grace? This is the programme, this is called here, and make your own giving response to the financial challenge. Because again, your leadership team need to be behind this and involved with it, and also prepared to look at their own situations and what's their own response as well. So that's why that's important. Phew, I hope that didn't scare too many people. That's why we're saying planning is quite a major part of it, doesn't it? Abraham Lincoln said something about how long it takes to prepare the axe before you then use it. Some quotes on that, but it does look like quite a lot of work. Now, if that does horrify you completely and say we don't have the facility to do that, we have another, just a quick one to show you. Oh, I've got it, actually, no, I've got it on here. Hang on, go back to my, where's it gone? Oh, resume slideshow, yes, let's do that. There we go. This one is the short version. So if you didn't really want to get into all the details of that, and Christine's going to talk a bit about the different programs that you might be able to use the resources from. This one is a case statement, but it's only on 2 pages. Very much the same basis. It looks at where we've come from, where we're going, what's good, what are the opportunities, what's the challenge. It gives you a much shorter sum up of our situation financially and what the deficit is. But it does give you, again, the regular giving current situation, how many people are giving X amount. So it is important that we understand that and do the work behind finding out that. So again, you'll get this on the slide so you can read this in a bit more detail. But as I say, if the first case statement looked like far too much work to do, hopefully this one is a little less scary. Right, so far then, we've looked at what, why we might want to do a giving program, and how to start it off. And we've basically done our foundation there. I like this picture here. So the foundation at the bottom, planning group, involving the leadership, working out your case statement, and the roof on here, it's prayer covering it over. And then we have our two foundational columns, in a sense, of that. Moving from there, we've got our preaching, and then the other side, the literature. And preaching is where we teach about giving, and the literature that we give out is where we challenge to give. So it's worth remembering that as well. The four parts at the top there are groups. If you've got small groups, small prayer groups, or small Bible study groups, it'd be useful to use those groups as well. There's literature for that as well. Children, don't forget our children, and teaching them about the generosity of God and giving. They can be included in this as well. Obviously at the moment, socials and visiting is not really happening unless you're doing socials, something online, which is a possibility. And visiting, you could talk about, you could use in a sense with phone calls and Zoom calls as well. But yeah, that's how I'm just going to now, the last part I'm going to talk about is just shortly on preaching, and then I'm going to pass over to Christine to look at the literature side and the responses. Okay. To give you a little quote from Archbishop Rowan Williams, to keep getting us back into what we're doing, because I know, when we talk about money, yeah, it can be a challenge, can't it? But I always think we need to bring ourselves back to where God is in all this. And I quite like his quote here. What we do with our money proclaims who we think we are, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. All our actions in some degree reveal us. Why should our economic life be different? Why should this too not be an area in which we help to share our eternal destiny, a matter of sin or holiness? I like that one, really. When we talk about money, we all have our own money stories of what our relationship with money is. And I think that's why it can be quite a sensitive subject. But it's one that we should not be shying away from in our teaching on matters of discipleship. It's pretty vital. And what's interesting is, isn't it, there's 2,300 verses in the Bible, 2,300 on money or giving, and as compared to 500 on prayer. And if you think about it, we have a lot of teaching on prayer. How much teaching do we have on money? And yeah, it's an important thing for us to really address. So I'm not going to talk too long on preaching, because in October we're having a CMD morning on this with invited speakers. So that's in October. So any clergy who are tuning in today, look out for the dates for that and pass that on. But just to give a few little pointers about this, that when doing preaching, teaching, the generosity and grace of God should be the starting point. And preaching and teaching about the generosity being at the heart of God's character. God can do no other, because God is love, and the essence of loving is giving. Do you know, I always think of the John Lewis advert at Christmas, and we all look forward to those adverts when they come out. And there was one a few years ago, and it was a little boy, and he was so excited about Christmas coming up, and you can see it every day, and then all of a sudden it's Christmas Day morning, and he runs downstairs and he runs in to where the tree is, grabs a present, And you kind of think he's just going to open it. No, he then runs into his parents and gives it to his mum and dad, and watches them open it, and you see the joy on his face, and it's that joy of giving that was what he was excited about. And I love that story. I think it sums up as well the way God loves to give to us, and actually what a blessing it is when we give. Okay. And just to say, stewardship ideas for sermons, and who's interested, Portsmouth Diocese have done a very good whole paper with different ideas from the lectionary. So that's a useful one to look up. Okay. And Parish Resources, again, we encourage people to look at this a lot. There's so many good resources here. And in the giving section, which is down here, resources to encourage giving, and all sorts of things as well. And on if you go up to this line up here, usually when you go on the website and click on giving, that drop down, lots of different subjects on giving there. Okay, so do we have any questions so far?
There aren't any questions at the moment, so I think I'll go straight on if that's okay, because we've got very little time left. But if there are any questions, there was one question which I kind of answered. If there are any more questions, pop them in the box. Liz might be able to type the answers whilst I'm talking, but I'll try and leave a couple of minutes at the end as well to pick up on any other questions.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. No, thank you, Liz. I think that was very helpful. One or two people have been commenting how helpful that was as we went along. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go on to some practical things that we can find. Let me put this into a slideshow. Some resources that are available. So Liz has taken us through all the background planning, which is really critical when you're running a giving program. But let's just look at a few of the resources that were available online when you get into the practicalities now of actually running the program. It's got the planning stuff in it as well, actually. We're looking at some of that too, but I want to look more at the actual running of the program now. So there are three main resources which can be found on the Parish Resources website. I think you can see my arrow at the bottom there. There's the link to the Parish Resources website that Liz just showed us. And on there you can see these three different resources for running a giving program. So the first is Giving in Grace, which Liz took that larger document from. Giving in Grace is fantastic. It's a really good resource. It is huge. When you go on the website, it's a bit kind of overwhelming because it is huge. It's got loads of resources in it, but they're very good. It's got resources for preaching. Somebody was asking about that as well. It's got resources for all age services, for using with youth, and it's got all sorts of different things. We're going to have a closer look in a moment. And then the Simple Giving Program is a much smaller giving program, and the smaller case statement example that Liz showed us came from this. And so it's the same, much the same stuff as Giving in Grace, but much smaller. It's very easy to understand, very useful little program. And then finally, the Parish Funding Program, which works well with all sizes of church, and it's got a really strong focus on vision and encouraging people to support the vision of the church and taking that into your funding program. So looking at those one at a time, Giving in Grace, again, the link's at the bottom there to the Giving in Grace website if you want to have a look at it. As I said, it's a big resource. It leads you through a giving program or an annual review. It's got lots of templates for letters, for literature, loads of resources, as I said, for use with different groups and different ages. And it's something where you could use the whole resource. You could work through it step by step. You can actually register to it, but you don't need to register to it. But if you want to kind of track your progress, you can register and track your progress through it. But if you don't want to do that, you can just dip in, find the bits that are useful to you and use those. So before I go on, I just wanted to have a little look at the website. So when you look at it, you're not too overwhelmed. Where is it now? Here we are. So can you see that?
Yeah.
This is the homepage to Giving in Grace. So when you log onto the website, you get to this page. And then you can see at the bottom here, there's 3 tabs: Stewardship Programme, Stewardship Tasks, Annual Review, and they've all got really useful resources within them. I'm going to have a look at this one saying Stewardship Programme. So if we go into that one, you get to a page like this. So the tabs across the top here are the same as the ones down here, and you can just click on what you want to look at. So Liz was looking here in building the case, and if you go into there, you find the example that Liz showed us, together with templates for making your own. Designing the programme, there's all sorts of interesting information there. I'm going to click on this one, preparing the literature. If we click on there, and then you can see all sorts of things. So there's a brochure, there's a clergy ask letter, there's response forms, all these things. There are templates for creating all these things. So for example, if we go into the brochure, down at the bottom here, downloads, there's a template for preparing the brochure. There's an example of a brochure, which we're going to look at. So there's all these different resources that you can download and create your own things. Again, down the side here, you've got the brochure. Again, if you go into the clergy ask letter, there's templates for letters that you can use. So it's all really useful. If I go back into my presentation now, you can see, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of the brochure. So this is taken from just where I was looking there on the website. There's a template for a brochure, and then there's an example, which is for the same church that Liz was looking at. Whether it's real or not, we don't know. But so a brochure is just something that you would give out to people, just something showing them the results of that case statement, the things that you've come up with that you want people to think about. So this is done in the form of a foldable leaflet. You can see it's got 3 little pages, and I'll show you the other side in a moment. So first of all, setting out the vision of the church. To me, actually, the vision section here isn't great. They've put the practical things that they want to do. It'd be quite nice to have a vision statement there, what the overall vision of the church is, followed by the practical things that you hope to do in the year. I'd quite like to see that. But it says those practical things they hope to achieve, what the spending will be for those things, what the income, the needed income is for all those things. You can have a look at this later in more detail. I'm going through quickly, so we don't have a huge amount of time, but you can look at this in more detail when you receive the presentation. So then how much do we need? How much do we need to give? People need to be given practical ways to think about what they should do. If you just tell them what the need is, they don't necessarily know how they can make a difference. So this is suggesting we could increase our giving to meet the church's need. We could join the planned giving scheme with weekly envelopes or a standing order, or you may want to put on yours joining the parish giving scheme, or whatever it is that you do in your church. Optimise our giving by using gift aid, so encouraging people to sign up to gift aid, encouraging people to give a legacy gift. That's something that we'll look at in more detail in a future webinar as well. Or encouraging people to give proportionately. You might want to encourage tithing in your church. That might be the way you want to go. But here it says, at the end of the day, how much you give is a thoughtful, prayerful decision only you can make. Love is generous, love is kind, and love is selfless. We see that in all God gives to us, how will we respond? So it's encouraging people to respond. So on this side, lays out what is achieved by giving. So what does the church do? What is the ministry of the church? The giving isn't just to fundraise, but it's to support the ministry and the mission of the church. So this is listing sick people visited, confirmation courses, school work, bereavement work, baptisms, all sorts of different things are listed there. So thinking through the ministry of your church. And then we've got the gift array here that Liz talked about in the case statement. So putting the gift array, giving people, showing people how much, you know, if a certain number of people increase their giving by this amount, you would get this amount of income. And so showing people how we could reach that target that we need. And at the end here, giving people the choices. What is it that they could do in your church? Is it the parish giving scheme? Is it signing up to a standing order? What is it that they can do? How can they do that? Writing an ask letter. This is another important thing, to write a letter to people. These letters should be personal. They should be delivered by hand. They should be signed by the clergy, so that it is a personal ask to people. And you need to tailor your letter to the type of person, whether it's a church leader, whether it's a planned giver, whether it's a plate giver. So different people give in different ways, and your letter should be personal to them. And think about what motivates people to give. Some people are motivated by the biblical, what they would hear in the sermon, the biblical challenges to give back generously to a generous God. They're motivated by discipleship, giving in terms of discipleship. Others are motivated by the ministry of the church. What is this giving going to achieve in terms of the ministry of the church? And others are simply want to respond to a need if there's a financial need in the church. So think about different motivations and tailor your letter appropriately. Say thank you. Start your letter by thanking people, because people are giving already. So thank people and then encourage them to review their giving. Give them the options, include a response card, enclose an envelope so that people are able to respond. So the second one, the simple giving program, it is a really simple program. Again, it's got lots of templates, case statements, examples, so things that you can work through. This one focuses on having a launch event, a big event, so that the community can be involved as well. So maybe you'll have an event that you invite the congregation to, but you invite the local community, and you would write your letter, a different letter to the community, inviting them to come along and hear what you're doing in the church, hear what your mission is, what your vision is. And again, within the programme, there are lots of templates, lots of resources that you can access. I'll just show you this page. This is the kind of home page of the Simple Giving programme, and you can see all the different things are there. It's very simple. This is kind of like the index page, really. Very simple, all the things you have. A template letter to invite your congregation, a template letter to invite your community. I was going to show you that, but I won't for the time, but you can just click on that when you go onto the website and have a look. Template invitation cards, response forms for the launch event, prayer resources, reflection resources, preaching resources, they're all in there. Again, a simple brochure. It's a really nice brochure, actually, this one. So that's something to have a little look at as well. And then a template thank you letter. So it's all there. It's much more simple than the Giving in Grace, but it's got all the same sort of materials. And then finally, the parish funding programme. Again, it's quite a simple one to use. Really good for the preaching and teaching resources, really good for resources on vision and mission, really helpful to plan those initial stages, to think about your vision and think about the mission of your church. There's a really good PowerPoint presentation as well, a template for a presentation that you might use at your launch event. It's really useful. I was going to show you that, but again, I'm running out of time, so I won't show you it, but it's a really nice little PowerPoint presentation template that you might want to have a look at. It's really long, actually, but again, you could pick out the bits of it that were relevant to your church. So this is the index page for the parish funding programme. So again, all the different resources. When you go onto the website, you can click on all of these and see what they have. So so here where it says presentation PowerPoint template, that's the one I was talking about, that's really useful. But again, they have sample letters, sample brochures. They call it a leaflet rather than a brochure, same thing, but they have all of these there that you can have a look at. So yeah, so just very quickly, those are the three that you can use. I would encourage you on the pages, I've got the links to all of those, so I would encourage you to have a look, see what you think. Maybe start looking at the parish funding programme and the small churches one, so you're not overwhelmed. Then go on to Giving in Grace, which is brilliant, but it is really big. So have a look at all of those and see which ones you might like to use for your church. Okay, I'll
Thanks,
stop
Christine.
there.
Just a question on that last one with the launch events and things like that.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing that could be adapted to an online event, a virtual event, Zoom event?
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could do a really nice virtual event if you perhaps using that PowerPoint template that you'll find in the I can't remember which one it's in now, the Parish Funding Programme, I think, using that PowerPoint template and creating something that you could show in the same way as we're showing in this webinar. You could hold a Zoom event and invite people from your congregation, from your local community, and show them what you've been planning and invite a response. You may have seen our webinar on online giving as well. You could, if you've set up an online giving account, if you had a launch event, you could give people the option to make a donation that way, if perhaps from the local community, perhaps those who are not necessarily going to sign up to regular giving but might want to give a donation at the event. So you could incorporate some of those ideas, and I think that could work really well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Right, good. Have we got any questions? Oh, actually, well done. We got 2 minutes to go.
The annual review of giving, the link shown on the slide now, we didn't have a link for the annual review, but if you go to the Giving in Grace website, I clicked on the Stewardship Programme button. There's another button for annual review. If you were to click on that one, then you'd find all the resources for the annual review.
Yeah, that's right. That's fine. Great. Well, I hope we haven't bamboozled you too much today with what there is out there to use, and I really hope that today has been helpful in just starting to think about things. As we say, you know, during this time of still semi-lockdown, there is a lot we can do in our planning ahead and planning for, but for, you know, if there are any particular specific questions or ways that we can help you with this, then please do get in touch. That's what we're here for. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon. As I say, next week is communicating your needs, tips to maximise the impact, and looking at communicating through letters, social media, things like that. We might even have some great examples of how not to do it. So and some very good ones that are a bit like, oh dear. So yeah, so join us, it'll be fun. And Christine will be sending around very soon, probably tomorrow, I imagine, or today, the slides and the information for next week.
Yeah.
Keep in touch, and all stay safe and stay well. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everybody, and see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.